My never I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
In many cases of people who built in waterways, some actually authorized to build huge mansions in waterways, and there are many, many examples and so on. That is part of the problem. And indeed, the other part of the problem are stories of people who actually fill in, lakes and so on, which are meant to take water in situations like this, fill lakes with concrete and build structures on them and so on. There's a question of law enforcement, and so on. And then some people have raised the question of discipline, people pouring rubbish into gutters and so on. My problem with that kind of talk is simply that they are not talking on the basis of empirical evidence.
Right.
Seeing 5, 10 people pouring rubbish into gutters, and that becomes the reason, why we are where we are. How much rubbish is dumped into gutters? How much? You understand? How does that affect, flooding and so on? I don't see any empirical study. All I see are anecdotes and so on, which simply in situations like this are not very helpful, for us. Truth of the matter is that hundreds of thousands of people have been affected by this flooding. Hundreds of thousands of people. And I know that this is not the first time. I recall in the late 1970s, there was a similar flooding. And the politicians at that time, revolutionary politicians at that time, went to visit the affected people in canoes and so on, wearing Wellington boots and diving suits and so on. It didn't solve the problem. I remember the flooding that led to the huge fire outbreak around Kwame Nkrumah Circle and the consequences and so on. Huge consequences, for all of us. The authorities were not able to resolve the problem then. Of course, we know about flooding in many parts of the country. In the lower, Akosombo area, only a couple of years ago, we saw massive flooding, which led to very, very terrible consequences for all of us. We've seen flooding in the Tono area directly as a result of the spillage of water from a dam in Burkina Faso and so on. So flooding has been with us for a very, very long time. Now, this morning, you have read a story which says that the World Bank is not happy about the implementation of a measure for which we secured, funding. And the rate of implementation is described almost as lackluster, very, very low level of implementation. So this is a problem which has been with us. If we trace the performance of the various governments we've had over the last 30 years or more, all of the performance has been most abysmal. The Odo River, the Odo is supposed to take in a lot of the water which gets spilled and which causes all of these troubles and fires and so on. There has been plans for distilling the Odo and making it a waterway, for urban transportation and so on. These plans have existed for more than 50 years. They've never been implemented. So part of the reason why we have this is the lack of commitment, by various governments to resolve the problem. And we have the problem now. Now, yesterday we were told that the president has directed that 350 million cedis should be released for emergency relief from the contingency fund. Now, this one I was trying to do the mathematics, and dependent on the numbers that you use. In fact, if you're most generous, per capita, people will be receiving 3,000 cedis.
Yeah.
That doesn't solve any problem. Then you have people whose whole lives have been destroyed. Nothing is left. apart from their ability to breathe and eat. There's nothing left. Their dwellings have been destroyed, their furniture is gone, schools have been washed away and so on. So if you come to think of 3,000 cedis per capita, that's being very generous. It doesn't resolve any problem. On the other hand, government is constrained because resources available to government are not unlimited. And if all we can do is to give 3,000 cedis, per capita, I don't think that the problem is resolved yet. There are a few things that I've observed which are not really substantial, but the cosmetic value is also very important. Yesterday or 2 days ago, the president decided to go on a helicopter trip around the flooded areas to assess the damage, Now, I know the president to be a historian and a journalist, His trip is not likely to produce a scientific outcome. This helicopter trip is not likely to produce a scientific outcome for the problems that the people of this country are confronted with. It shows some empathy with the people who are affected and so on, but I would have thought that even that would have been better displayed if it was walking on the ground, touching people, getting into affected homes, lifting babies and so on. The empathy would have been better expressed than flying around the flooded city in a helicopter. But that is what perhaps his advisors, put before him. And he did it, I don't think that the aesthetics are good enough. In a situation where you have this massive flooding and your leaders are in helicopters flying over you, the aesthetics are not very good, But then that has been done. At least it shows some level of concern, even though the aesthetics do not appear to be excellent. You understand? Now, where we are, I think it's time for us to go back to the drawing board.
Or perhaps, Kwesi, he would have done both. Get an aerial view, which is a bird's eye view of the situation. It's you would appreciate the situation much more if you are in the air, and then come down and then interact with the people.
Well, I have no objection to that.
Yeah.
I have no objection to that. But the aesthetics,
I understand.
They didn't look very good.
With the optics.
Yeah, the aesthetics didn't look very good. But I agree with you. I mean, both could have been done.
Yes.
But it's now time for us to come back, to take a few steps back and to review the entire national life. Not aspects of it, entire national life. Review the prevailing land tenure system. Review engineering with regards to urban settlement development. What are the codes, our building codes? Are we still building houses on concrete floors? We go to some houses and all the space around the houses are concrete, sometimes even tiled. So the ability to soak water is completely removed. Are we still going to approve building codes which allow this to happen? That's one. Are we still, building houses without rain harvesting systems? And I know that in the colonial era, rain harvesting systems were part of the building code. You understand? Why have we abandoned that? Why are we not harvesting rains and so on? And you see, this comes from the fact that all of this rain which is pouring into the sea and killing people and making people homeless and so on is valuable. Water is so valuable. This is water you need for irrigation. This is water you need for fish farming. This is water you need for promoting healthy livelihoods and so on. And all of that has now become a problem. You understand? In some parts of the world, people are struggling for, small quantities of water, and they can't get. They have been hit by drought. Tehran in Iran, for example, has been hit by drought for close to 3 years. Now we have the water, and has become a problem for us.
Yeah.
How come the water, which is so essential for life, has been allowed to become a problem for us? That's something that we have to, rethink, Should housing be entirely, an activity for profit, for monetary profit? I'm not talking about social profit. Should housing be an activity just for monetary profit? That's a question we have to ask. That's a question we have to answer. In the light of these developments, shouldn't the state be interested in building appropriate housing in this kind of situation and so on? Then there's a whole topography of not just Accra, but Accra and the surrounding areas. We do know, for example, that Accra is surrounded by very huge mountains and hills and so on. And the runoff, from the Equapim Mountains and so on, all pours down to Accra.
Yeah.
How do we manage that? You understand? How do we manage that? That's a real problem. How do we manage that? We know of the regulations which say that flowing water, like rivers and so on, people should not engage in commercial activities some distance to the waterbed. Are we observing that? If we are not observing that, why are we not observing that? And so on. So there are a whole lot of questions. Now, what kind of roads are we constructing? What kind of bridges are we building? There's one particular place in Accra, from Christian Village towards Domi, there's a bridge there. I'm not an engineer, okay? I'm not a planner. My brother, if you go there and you see the bridge is so low. You don't have to be an engineer to see that this bridge would have problems. The bridge is so low. So traffic actually, flows this way, and the bridge is low, and then it rises again. Anytime it rains, no vehicle can go over the bridge. And that's a problem with engineering. That is not because people are throwing garbage into the water. It's a problem it's an engineering problem. How did we construct a bridge so low, that every time it rains, it gets flooded and vehicles cannot move and so on? That's a problem. You understand? So it's a very complicated problem. There are no easy solutions. It does not take one discipline to address the hydra-headed problems which have emerged as a result of this, and so on. Now, the other thing is, what do we do with the work of institutions like the meteorological organizations? Because as far as I know, this rain was predicted months before it happened.
Yes.
The Meteorological Services Authority warned us that this year...
They went beyond warning us to actually suggest things that we should do to mitigate the effects of the heavy downpour.
Well, thank you very much. You are only adding to what I'm saying,
Absolutely.
So we knew that we're going to face these problems perhaps months, or maybe even a few years earlier. So what do we do with the reports that the experts give us about our future? I know as a fact that Accra is earthquake prone. The Geological Survey Department then, as it was, had been warning us for well over 30 years. One of the first stories I did as a journalist on the Ghanaian Times was a report from the Geological Survey Department about the possible impact of earthquakes on us and how it is possible that we are going to experience a major earthquake very soon. What have we done with that report? There are all kinds of seismic reports, from qualified people and so on. What have we done with it? There's even a question of what kind of education do we give our people? You understand? How many seismic engineers are we training? And how are we deploying them? There's now a category of science which is known as earthquake engineering. How many earthquake engineers have we trained? How are we deploying them? How many of them do we have in our whole system and so on? So all of these problems come up. You know, it's a huge problem with many dimensions. Unfortunately for us, many of those who are in public life are taken in by the cosmetics. You understand? The cosmetics are more important to them than substance. So the rain comes, there's a lot of flood, people die, houses are broken down and so on. And what is their concern? How to demonstrate that they sympathize with the people. So they buy a few bags of rice, they wear Wellington boots, they stand in the rain, they touch a few babies and so on. And it's end of the matter. That's where their concern ends. You understand? That's where their concern ends. And then sometimes they make flamboyant speeches, flamboyant speeches that they themselves do not take serious. And they think that the matter has come to an end. We are living in a world in which the elements are at war. The elements, they are at war. And the war of the elements produces disasters and catastrophes. We've got to be able to tame the elements. And it's a scientific thing. It's science. You have to develop your science to cope with the struggle of the elements. You understand? One of the problems we've been having over this long period of time is the question of the tide, the wave, what do you call it? The sea tides, isn't it?
Yes.
It's created enormous problems around Keita and so on. And then we came up with this very simple solution of sea defense projects.
The tidal waves is what you're talking
Tidal
about.
waves, yes. So we come up with the idea of sea defense walls. Now we know that we build a sea defense wall in one area and the tide moves to another area. It's not a solution. It provides temporary relief for those immediately affected, but can create problems for others who are not immediately affected and so on. So we need to have a holistic view of the problem and to find holistic solutions. And that involves direct, and I mean direct state involvement in all aspects of our life.
Okay.
Some of these things cannot be left to private capital. Private capital is not interested in ensuring that there's no flooding in Accra. You understand?
All right.
What is the return, on stopping flooding in Accra and so on? So perhaps the time has come for us to look very seriously at direct involvement of the state in planning and the execution of plans for human habitation and so on.
Okay. All right. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we would get the thoughts of Mr. Titus Glover, Honorable Titus Glover, on this matter as well, because I don't want to interrupt him when it starts, just like we didn't interrupt Mr. Kwesi Pratt with any commercial breaks, so we just want to be fair. So, Rupa, small break, and then we'll come back to you. Stay.
No flooding, Choco.
See my house, nothing, there's no problem, there's no problem.
No
this is Choco
flood.
for you.
Choco
no
for
flood.
you. Check the environment.
See the road. Everyone can move freely.
Everywhere
you can
clean.
walk. You can drive.
Can't get you Choco.
You say Choco is no good. Choco is no good.
Choco for you.
Choco for you. Choco speak fast.
No flood.
No flood.
No flooding, Choco.
See my house. See my house, nothing.
This is the minorities' position in respect to the happenings in our country. Ghanaians woke up yesterday to scenes that have become tragically familiar under this administration. Major parts of our national capital submerged, homes destroyed, livelihood washed away, and citizens stranded in the very city that houses the seat of government. This is not an isolated weather event. It is the predictable consequence of a government that talks about preparedness while doing nothing to deliver it. Today, we find ourselves a nation in mourning. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, before anything else is said, we must pause. Behind every flooded street and every submerged home is a family whose world has been upended overnight. Tonight, somewhere in this city, a mother is sitting by a hospital bed, holding the hand of a child she nearly lost. Tonight, somewhere else, a husband is searching for a wife who has not come home. Somewhere, a father is standing in the wreckage of a shop he built with his own 2 hands over 20 years, watching everything he worked for float away in brown water. These are not statistics. These are our people. Ghana is still counting on its losses, and we fear that what we know today is only a fraction of what we still come to learn in the days ahead. To the families who have lost loved ones, to those keeping vigil beside hospital beds, not knowing whether their relatives will recover, to the traders and artisans and ordinary working Ghanaians who have lost everything they spent a lifetime building, we, the MPP minority, feel your pain. We are your neighbors, your relatives, your constituent too, and your grief is our grief. We hold you in our prayers tonight and in the days to come. But our compassion does not end with words of comfort. We make this solemn promise to every Ghanaian touched by this tragedy. We, the mighty minority, will use every tool of accountability available to us, both within this house and beyond it, to ensure that those whose negligence contributed to this disaster answer for it. Your losses deserve more than sympathy. It deserves justice, and the minority will not rest until you have it. Now, let me go back to the task force that existed on paper and on paper alone. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, last year, His Excellency, the President, announced the establishment of an anti-flood task force, specifically charged with preparing the capital for the rainy season, chaired by his Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of operations, Mr. Stan Jose Dogwe. The public was assured that lessons had been learned and that the year would be different. Yesterday's flooding is the clearest evidence that this task force produced no meaningful intervention on the ground. If serious drainage works, the silting or flood mitigation infrastructure had been undertaken, the impact of the rains, however heavy, would have been measurably reduced. Instead, entire neighborhoods went underwater, exposing the gap between government rhetoric and government delivery. Now we see a pattern, not an accident. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this was not the first flooding incident of the year. Weeks earlier, significant parts of Accra were already inundated at a time when the president was out of the country on an official visit that took him through the United Kingdom and Belarus. On his return, rather than point to work already completed by the task force, the president called for a fresh presentation and mapping of affected areas. The government that had genuinely prepared for the rains would not need to commission a new assessment after the damage had already been done. The need for an after-the-fact presentation is itself an admission that no adequate plan existed beforehand. Sanitation policy without a plan. We note that this government has announced a sanitation policy without a plan. Compounding the crisis is the government's decision not to renew waste management contracts with some contractors, following concerns raised about the term of these contracts. The minority does not dispute that public purse must be protected from poorly structured agreements. However, terminating or declining to renew a major waste collection arrangement without first putting in place credible alternatives has consequences. In the resulting vacuum, informal and unregulated waste collectors, commonly referred to as aboboya operators, have proliferated. There is documented video evidence of such operators dumping refuse directly into gutters and drains. Blocked drainage systems are a direct and significant
All right, so that's the minorities press conference that it organized yesterday. Daniel Nitaitos, Nikwate Titus Global is still here with us, a former MP and also national organizer of the NPP. Hopefully, is also here with us. So yesterday, the minority held a news conference. In fact, it's been captured in today's Daily Guide and some of the other papers as well. I'm not sure that you're here. You reiterate some of the things that the minorities said. So, what are also your thoughts, Muruba, on the matter?
Good morning to your viewers, my big brother, mentor, friend, yourself, and your technical team. I will associate myself, just like Kwesi said earlier, with all those families who have lost their loved ones and empathize with those properties that have been destroyed out of these floods. But before I add my voice to the flood, there are two points that I want to share. I'm seeing on social media that yesterday the president was in Tema, a land that belonged to VACO some time ago is now going to be used as an industrial park. When I was the CEO of VACO, when I took over on the 1st of August, that land has expired. The leasehold of 60 years have expired. So TDC was demanding over 800 million cedis to renew that leasehold for the next 60 years. But at the time, VACO hasn't got the money. So they made an application to President Nando so that they can reduce that figure. At that time, my predecessor, Dana Chamba, was then the CEO of VACO. So when the response came, I was in the chair. A letter signed by the DUTU that has really dwindled the 800 million to close to about a little over 100 million, which was quite reasonable. But raising that money was also a challenge. And because VACO was going through a lot of problems in terms of equipment, money to buy raw materials and all that, I met my board. I said, look, we have this land there. And because the leasehold has expired, we need to renew. We don't have the money to. If the board can constitute a team so that we can look for a good price, dispose between 100 to 120 acres of the land, is an industrial plot. So that we can raise between $300 million to $350 million. One, pay for the renewal, because the letter that came from the president was to renew for the next 50 years. We can pay off the leasehold and secure the land in the name of VACO. And critically invest. For example, we're trying to connect a gas pipeline from Sentu, which is a very close door, to the boiler house, the carbon bake, then to the cell lines. We re-equip equipment all over the place. And to my disappointment, my board did not see what I'm saying. They didn't agree with me. Today the land is gone. The land is totally gone. VACO does not own that land anymore. So I feel so sorry that the idea initiative that I brought could not have the support of my board. And Dr. Henry Benya, he was the board chairman at the time. And this is the price that they pay for not supporting that cause. Because if as we speak now, VACO is struggling to get an investor to come and invest in the plant. We will have done this coup and gradually raise the plant.
What was the board's basis for disagreeing with this policy initiative?
I remember at the meeting, what they said was that we should recouch my proposal. In fact, I don't want to mention them. At the board, about 7 people, they agreed. 5 agreed. The 6th person said, no, they have to go back and recouch the whole proposal as to how we want to dispose. And because we give them detail of the breakdown as to how we want to invest the money in these critical areas of the plant and all that. So I tasked my deputy at the time, Abwaji Jedu, and the finance director to look at it. We went back and we didn't agree until I left to the regional.
Me has raised a very important question. And I'm wondering if we will discuss it. You understand?
Right.
Because what he has raised is a very important question.
The Valco issue.
The Valco issue is very, very important. You see, there's no way Valco on its own can survive without an integrated aluminium industry. And the land which was made available to Valco, under the Nkrumah government, was made available to Valco in anticipation of the development of the entire integrated aluminium industry. Why should we dispose of the land? Why? Are we abandoning the idea of a fully integrated aluminium industry? Are we abandoning that? And if we abandon that, what are the consequences for the future of the national economy? The other problem which arises is that TDC claims that some agreement tenure has expired and needs to be reviewed. TDC is not a private entity. It's a government entity. Valco is a government entity. So why does that become a problem for us? Why can't we look at the overall national interest in dealing with the question of Valco lands? Why do we have to sell Valco land, state institutions sell Valco land, make money, and hand it over to another state institution in order to preserve a huge dream which has the capacity for transforming the Ghanaian economy? It doesn't make sense. In much the same way, government institutions in ports, they come to the ports and accumulate demurrage and so on. Government institutions. Because government cannot pay government, things rot at the ports. Things are auctioned at the port for next to nothing. Does it make sense? Master, does it make sense?
No, it doesn't.
So the idea of an integrated aluminum industry, has it been abandoned? This so-called industrial park, how does that promote an integrated aluminum industry for Ghana, which is so crucial for our development, so crucial for value addition in the extraction of bauxite and so on? I can't understand. Sometimes I wonder how people will put in responsible positions and so on, make decisions about this country. I just wonder, how do they make decisions? What are they looking at? How can you treat Valco as an island on its own, treat TDC as an island, treat the Ministry of Finance as another island, and so on? Why can't we see how all of these are connected and how they ought to promote the national interest?
Thank you.
I can't believe it.
Kwesi, thank you for the intervention.
Master, can you believe it? That this is how we run Ghana. This is how we have been running Ghana since 1966. Is there any wonder why we are in this crisis?
Thank you for the intervention. But actually, that land, Kwesi, was meant for the processing of the bauxite into alumina. But Kaiser itself, because he has a sister plant in Jamaica, does the processing of the bauxite and brings the alumina to Tema. So they left the land fallow for over 60 years. So that is what has really happened.
Couldn't we correct this situation?
We could have.
When we are talking about value addition, what does it mean?
So that was why Nanado's government tried to bring the integrated aluminium itself to Giadeke. That was the concept, how we could really do the integration very well in the value chain and all that. Then I never had the opportunity to speak on this matter, where the NDC regional chairman in the Central Region and the MCE went to lock up a radio station in Kaswa. I was totally alarmed that a whole chairman can move into Metro TV because they are being criticized. I was alarmed where you can get to that level, because when NDC was in opposition, they have every opportunity and say all kinds of things that they want. But for a regional chairman can lock a radio station and put a key in his pocket. Hey, then Ghana, what we've got into, it's a problem. So I feel like sharing this thing because I was really not comfortable when these things were happening. Then come to the substantive matter for this flooding. I saw on your screen where a little child, even taken out because the whole room is being flooded on the rooftop of a kiosk or something. I saw dead bodies all over. Even Tema, a lady was sitting on the drain, and the wooden, what they call it, the cover just broke, and she entered into the drain, and we've not even seen the woman as of today. She's gone. A lot of things have been destroyed. I remember on the 3rd of June, 2015, when this flood came, it cost almost 159 people's death. And President Mahama at the time had a committee chaired by the respected Appeal Court Judge, Justice Isaac Delali Dose, to look at the cause of the flooding and make some recommendations. And President Mahama, this is his 6th term in office as president. So with that experience of Justice Doche's committee's report.
You mean 6 years in office?
6 years in office. Because 4 years and 2 years, he's in the second year. And get 6 years in office. So he has some practical knowledge and experience when it comes to these flooding issues and all that. And I remember when he attacked President Akufo-Addo for his insensitivity and the lack of comprehensive flood management program to deal with the floods in Accra. He accused President Akufo-Addo and all that. Today, what has changed? Because having got the background of what happened on the June 3rd, last year there was rain. I thought that he could have moved straight into action. And lo and behold, he gave us a committee chaired by his deputy chief of staff. We haven't seen anything. We have not seen anything. And clearly, it tells me that we should move more into action than normal talk. As we all do, let's come empathize with the people. Like Kwesi said, go and share some mattresses, not more people, share food, blah, 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 blah. Now he said what? He's arranging between 300 and 350 million to be given to the victims of these floods. Kwesi, Moro, I want to blame the president for one or two reasons. One, this money that he said what they should give to the victims. You see, when the metro people started giving alarm of the extent of this rain that is coming, how has been our preparedness? The desilting and dredging of these streams and these big drains and all these things. Monies were not coming. This money that has been going to be used to support victims, if this money has been released to the Ministry of Works and Housing, the Hydro Department, they will have started desilting, dredging some of these drains. Last week, I saw one of my chiefs, Lafa Manche, the Nokufo, use his own pocket money around the Malam area, the Lafa River, went to rent a backhoe to desilt. So, these monies that are going to give it to the people, why didn't you earlier on give? So we begin to desilt all these drains because the whole field will stand. So the little downpour, the whole place is flooded. So that is misplaced priority. That is the way I see it. Number two, the attitudes of our people. Kwesi is saying that scientifically.
Before you talk about the attitude of our people, with regards to the first point that you made, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the Interior Minister,
that
Muntaka Mubarak, he granted an interview to one of the media houses here in Accra, and he says that no drainage infrastructure could have prevented Monday's devastating floods in Accra. He's insisting that the sheer volume of the rainfall overwhelmed the capital and left authorities with little chance of stopping the disaster. He said the torrential rains that claimed 9 lives and destroyed property He says the only way to have stopped the floodwaters from entering homes would have been to transform the entire city into one giant drainage channel. So he disagrees.
I to some extent, I will not flow with him, but at least he could have minimized the extent of this damage.
Right.
When you drive, when you get to Circle and you see your door, you see heaps of sand in there. When you are from Caprice heading towards Tesano, the Odo drain is on your right. You see heaps of sand in there.
Yeah.
So are we saying that if we have released money to desilt, wouldn't you have reduced the level? Have you seen the response, the way they are bashing him on social media?
I know.
Of that comment that he made?
I know.
Yeah, he wouldn't have said that. He shouldn't have made that comment at all. Because at this time, some people have lost their family members.
Because in that same interview, he makes the point that even in the advanced world, Americas, the Australias, the UKs, and so on,
there are disasters.
When the rains come down, they record floods. So it isn't as though, even if we had done almost all the things right, it would automatically stop the flooding from happening.
No, Moro. Moro. It's not about doing all the things right. Deserting is only one of 100 measures that ought to be taken. So deserting is not all the things. You understand?
Yes.
And the point he makes is valid. Who is saying that just deserting will solve this problem? Who is saying that just deserting gutters will solve this problem? This problem has many dimensions.
Okay, so I want him to land so that, because I like the point you're making. But
yes.
Once a title is done, you can come in.
When Kwesi was talking, I was quiet and listening to him.
No, he's
actually
strengthening your argument.
Is distorting my,
no, he's strengthening
my flow.
your argument. He's strengthening your argument.
At least my big brother should
your
take
flow.
notes. Yeah.
One comment by me disrupts your flow. Go and check your flow properly.
This is the second time he's interjecting me because I'm expecting at least keep cool, let me flow small. Because no, I was listening and enjoying your flow.
The Valco 1-2 was disturbing your flow. You introduced Valco in a discussion on floods, and you wanted it to just pass like that.
No. What I'm saying is that
when you're making a Valco comment, he actually wanted it to go on and on and on.
Not at all, but the point is that at least knowing him,
he was enjoying it.
Knowing him, Valco when we're not discussing Valco.
I know.
But knowing him, he will have waited for me to finish. Then we jump in. But clearly, like I'm saying,
he was just making a
I was trying to make my point that these monies that is going to be given to victims of these floods, if they have been, given out in the desilting, the dredging of these streams and these drains, at least could have minimized the level of this thing. When you go to Sakmono Lagoon, it is almost close to the rain line.
Yeah.
With weeds all over blocking the channel where the lagoon will pass under the channel into the Sea Atlantic. How are we going to clear it? How are we going to clear this? So it is a very essential part of minimizing the level of the floods that we are talking about. I was talking about the attitude of our people. And our own chiefs, some of our chiefs need to be blamed. Areas that are not meant to be sold are all gone. Yeah. Because these lands were reserved as nature to hold the level of the water, at least for some time, before gradually it moves into the Atlantic. It's all been sold. Look at the Weja Enclave. Look at the Weja Dam area. A lot of these lands around all those enclave areas are not supposed to be sold. But today they are all gone. The little downpour, the whole place become flooded. In fact, on Monday, I was on Joy News when the rain was falling. My prayer was that the Weja Dam should not fall. In as much as the whole place is flooded, when they begin to open the gates to spill out, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
So the attitude is where I am talking about, where some chiefs have made into as an enterprise, where lands that are not supposed to be sold, mangroves, used in part of Dansoba. I've been there. I was a regional minister, and I saw it, and I stopped it. But use youth, the propensity for money making in this country. They don't care the consequences. All they want is dollars into their pocket. Build your houses, and when the rain comes, they go and destroy all your properties. Meanwhile, they made their money and they are gone. So here comes to the issue of enforcement. Enforcement. Why an assembly sitting now? For people to build in places where they are not supposed to. When you're going to sign the permits, do you go to the ground?
No, you don't.
Do you go with your technical people to assess whether where they are siting this building is the right place to site? All you do is what? Sign. I didn't do that. Moro, as a regional minister, every morning when I come to office, Kwesi, I don't drive straight to the office. I move around. Sometimes I also West Woko. I go to the airport area, I go to Medina and check all these places before I go and sit in my office.
Yeah.
I'm not PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.